Hey guys, it's Jen at Better by the Day. Thanks for stopping by. We put out a lot of notations today on a lot of social media platforms in hopes of getting some subscribers. We've got a lot of stuff planned, especially for August when I can figure out how to edit and throw in clips a little bit easier. But today, I finally got around to downloading Dr. Ashton's manual. I believe she is deceased at this point, Dr. C.H. Ashton. The Ashton Manual is well known among all benzodiazepine support groups. One of the documentaries I had just watched included it, and every good source that I've gone to has included it. She appears to have been the mother of proper and accurate knowledge and information regarding benzodiazepines, the overprescription of them, and the seriousness of rapid taping, and especially acute cutoff. But, you know, what I'm discovering along this journey that I'm really sharing openly with you, almost as a diary as I'm going along. I've been in this for 30 years. And there have been times of abrupt acute withdrawal. I would say probably about 8 months was one of the longest periods I can remember. I remember the nightmare of it, especially trying to raise my kids. And that might not necessarily even be without it. Just maybe they switched the benzodiazepine for whatever reason, and it was a lower dosage. You know, on one hand, I take so much comfort in understanding what has happened to me. All the responsibility, the fear, the guilt, and the shame that I once put upon myself can definitely be spread and given back to where it belongs. I was responsible for keeping my appointments and taking my medication as prescribed, making sure the pharmacy records were right, worrying endlessly if the appointment was on a Friday and if something would go wrong over the weekend. I can tell you truthfully, to the lens of the screen, hence your beautiful faces, for the past 7 years, they have been on a taper from 5 milligrams down to 2 milligrams with the utmost responsibility and care. 2 milligrams at bedtime, end of story. So there is a huge problem out there. I actually Googled, I told you guys I'm going to get to the bottom of this issue with Klonopin not showing up on urinalysis, and only Klonopin. All other benzodiazepines are showing up. Now, as I said, I'm not a lab researcher or a doctor, but the reason I'm leaning towards this being so nefarious, so effed up, is simply because even though I'm not a lab tech, there has to be some work involved in that. If all I think there are 8 different categories of drug, just a standard urinalysis will look for, benzodiazepine being one of them. For the past 30 years, they have shown up without a problem, sometimes maybe when I didn't want them to, without a problem. As of 2022, thankfully I've been with that provider for a long time, and it was well known that I was very responsible with my medications and prescriptions, and my questions were very sincere. It was them who didn't seem to want to get real involved in the tapering. You know, either they went from, well, we're going to do this in 8 weeks with the SSRIs, to, here, just take it every month. Yeah, we'll talk about coming down a dosage next month. So I've fully realized we're kind of on our own. Unless you're in that 1% that has access to outstanding health care. Dr. Jordan Peterson, I know, was able to go to another country, go under anesthesia, and it's not even really well known or out there as to how they solved his protracted withdrawal and bind. But you know what? I had a really, really lousy weekend. I had shared Friday. I went to a walk-in clinic for a minor infection, although even that just, for some of us, you can get real, real sick at the smallest of things. If there's infection or something real off in the body, that brain injury is there, regardless of where you are at in the tapering or how much it may be healing or getting better. So I went and I got the usual round of antibiotics, some augmentin, and just had a horrible weekend. You know, like most people, you know, you're a little bit sick, maybe you have a cold or a minor infection. You go to the doctor, you get an antibiotic, and you get on with your day, you know. Fortunately, and not really, I was in a position to rest. And that's a really good thing because that's all I could do. And that has been really, really common over the years. And I'm just kind of connecting those dots, thinking that there's something wrong with me. Surely, if I told a doctor what was going on, it would be my major depressive disorder, which never, ever existed and has not existed since the SSRIs were flush in 2006, I believe. 2006. Yeah, it was 2006, before I moved to Georgia. So they gave me the augmentin. I felt really, really sick. Took my dosage, went to bed that night with every intention on getting up and going to work the next morning. I noticed the day before during my walk, which I do, which is just heaven to me. There's something about walking when you're in bind or going through that tapering or any type of withdrawal. Even if you're comfortable with where you're at, there is something about not just walking. The treadmill doesn't do it. It'll definitely get you the cardio and a little, lift those endorphins. But we have a walking path like right next to the water and in the woods. And it's something spiritual about being in nature. The heat doesn't bother me. The Georgia heat in summertime. The cold weather really does. That's where you might see me on the treadmill instead. But I took my regular walk and my legs were so heavy. I knew something was wrong. So I got the augmentin and went to bed. I felt worse the next day. As soon as I took the dog out in the bright sun, it just made me literally ill. And, I don't believe there are any coincidences anymore. Once I want to share something with you guys or I'm thinking about it on my own journey, it's like build the fields, they will come. So I finally got around today I was going to print out the Ashton Kutcher, but I think I'm going to need a few more cartridges to do that. But just in the very beginning, scanning through it on one page, I try to put the camera on it and flip it back, but it wouldn't let me flip it back over. But it says, exact quote, antibiotics for some reason seem to aggravate withdrawal symptoms. However, one class of antibiotics, the quinolones, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, actually displace benzodiazepines from their binding sites on the GABA receptors. These can precipitate acute withdrawal in people taking or tapering from benzodiazepines. So she's talking like you're on them. They're in your system. It may be necessary to take antibiotics during benzodiazepine withdrawal, but if possible, the quinolone ones should be avoided. There are at least 6 different quinolone ones. Ask your doctor if you're in doubt. You know what? That last part almost made me a little sad. Ask your doctor if you're in doubt. The walk-in clinic that I go to are phenomenal. I asked them to run a regular urinalysis for me to see if the benzodiazepine was showing up, and of course, if it was negative. And we're really going to be getting into that now. Like, I'm on a quest. I'm going to find out. When you Google it, the first thing that comes up is a Reddit thread. And it's basically people, why isn't in there anymore? What's going on? And there's a lot of, good answers, but they really don't make sense. They didn't make sense to me. There's no scientific answers. There's something obviously a little nefarious going on. If they have to mess with those tests so much that it'll pick up every single thing it's supposed to, except one benzodiazepine and only one benzodiazepine. They're designed to pick up benzodiazepine, period. And suddenly they're not. Or they've been doing it sporadically and randomly. However, this was the second test in a row that was negative. I suggest this, if you're in a tapering program, to be prepared with your doctor. We actually videotape me taking my dosage every single night. A close-up, so the print can be seen. You can verify that it is indeed a benzodiazepine, right to the swallowing of it. Just recorded, time-stamped, all of it every single night. I paid separately for this screen, which came back negative. But the whole point was, it was just a really bad weekend, and I've been feeling great and doing great. And now I fully understand this is not a linear process. Au contraire, not at all. However, I was, and I still am. I'm not going to talk myself out of being in a pretty stable and good place. I'm preparing for a dosage change. I listened to Dr. Joseph, and he seemed to feel you can go to your pharmacist and have them compound it down into a liquid form. I don't think Walgreens is going to do that. I'm just saying. There is a mom and pop pharmacy downtown in my local town that's worth asking about it. And there was, in one of the benzodiazepine stories that I have saved to my playlist, one guy happens to have been a chemist, and he used the actual pill itself to water it down. But there was some contraption that looked kind of complicated, but I'm going to figure it out because I am preparing to come down 0.10. That's it. Now, Dr. Joseph had said with Xanax, you can do that daily. I got to do a little bit more research on Klonopin. But I haven't even realized, even in the past 7 years, I knew that 3 milligram taper, I knew what was going on with me, but I didn't realize some of the behaviors and things that I go through and can't seem to really fight. This explains a lot. Now, that being said, I think I would probably have a tendency, all right, because I know this and it can be validated, why bother fighting it? Now I have in the past 7 years, when that urge just, the agoraphobia sets in. I don't want sunlight. I just want to turn the TV on and lay in bed. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to do anything. I realize now that that's all related to it, and it always felt like, I might as well be a paraplegic, and I just cannot move, and now having that behavior validated and knowing that there's a real medical cause behind it, as far as I'm concerned, it's all the more reason to overcome it and act anyway. I should have been out the door 2 hours ago as it stands now, but the first prescription that they gave me was Augmentin, and that is one of the quinolone ones, which you can look up. I need to do some more research on that later, but you can look up your particular antibiotic and see if it is one. I got real sick. This isn't medical advice. This is just what I personally do when I start an antibiotic. I double up the dose the first time. And then it's usually 1 twice a day until finished. And I do finish them all now. And that's what I had done. And, the thing is, probably if I look back, the last few times I've been been prescribed Augmentin in place of another usual antibiotic they were using, and get real concerned about building up that resistance. And it probably happened. But this one was pretty severe because I was in a real good place. It was very, very active and, feeling real good. But I promised myself and you guys when I started this, no bullshit. I don't want to get on here and pretend that everything's great, fine, and wonderful, and when it's not. And I did share for the first time some of that emotional deadness that I've basically been living with for 30 years is starting to rise up, and it's not a bad thing. I actually cried a couple of nights and felt so good about that, as crazy as it sounds. I lost a beloved, beloved brother in 2007 and could not cry at his funeral. I just could not. And believe me, my heart was crushed and broken into a million pieces. So that's rising up, and that's okay, because along with that, sincere joy and kind of awe, being out in nature, in prayer, that's all rising up to the surface and becoming what it once was, or what it would have been had this horrific drug never been introduced into my life, or my then like almost 14-year recovery from everything, total abstinence to a bunch of SSRIs and Klonopin. But yeah, so it's a struggle. And I'm going to end this tape because I really do have to get out there and work. But I put the address out there in a lot of different platforms in hopes of getting some subscribers. I have begging invitations to a lot of these doctors, like Dr. Daniel Amen, associates of Dr. Yosef, one staff member, Nicole, I can't think of her last name right now, but eventually, who knows? I mean, maybe somebody will get back to me. Dr. Amen's website or team actually did, and they left it, we will look into this, thank you. Once they realized I wasn't seeking medical advice, I was actually making an invitation to kind of boost the channel, because the thing is, it's for myself and it's for you guys to get the best possible resources, the latest and best information that's available to us in order to be free. Freedom is going to be different for all of us. Some of us, it will be landing on a specific dose, maybe for life. I'm 62. So a lot of research has to be done into the safety and the reality of totally going off them altogether, or just tapering down to a sustaining dose. I'm not going to stop until I have access to the right providers, and hopefully be able to offer the same to you guys. I will certainly share all the information that I get. And that being said, the lawsuit against neuropsychiatric clinics here in Georgia, in Villa Rica and Dallas, and to my utter horror, they did indeed open another office in Florida that is so clearly targeted to the elderly. It's absolutely frightening. I am the elderly, but it's Florida. There's going to be a whole lot of them, a whole lot older, and much, much more vulnerable, especially if you want to start messing around with benzodiazepines that frequently given to the elderly, like in nursing homes, just to get them to sleep or shut up half the time. Yeah, it happens that callously. But that particular doctor, Dr. Randy Warner, is going to be served. Papers are being drawn up now. Testimony, witnesses, depositions are going to be had. I'm willing to do a settlement, but I want verbal accountability. Some of these doctors are innocently ignorant. They really, truly are. But most of them, I think, know. I think they know exactly what's going on. The provider I have now does not do urinalysis. He knows it's not going to show up. It hasn't in all of his patients for years. He hasn't done it. So why does some know? He doesn't know why. He can't really offer an explanation. He just knows it's the truth. But in the meantime, guys, prove it. Prove it in every conceivable way. Ask them to please do a secondary, highly sensitized urine. The first time it happened to me, that's what they did, unbeknownst to me. I only found out because they tried to bill me for it, which they couldn't. So they innocently maybe didn't know, or the front desk. But when I got into the provider, she did say, I'm not even worried about it. Most of them are going to be worried about it. But why isn't the scientific or the researchers or the lab companies or the doctors themselves or the professionals, I haven't even heard Dr. Joseph talk about this. I feel like a pit bull with a bone. Like, I'm not letting this one go. It's just too dangerous for too many people. My provider has made it real clear this is temporary. So I have to find somebody else. And in the process of doing that, I want to share those interviews. I want to ask those questions before I set up appointments, and share them. I want to share them and tell you, I know what I'm up against. And the bottom line is just going to need to find a provider that just prescribes them. And I'm going to have to be responsible for my own taper. Or we're going to have to be responsible for each other. And we're going to have to share information, share resources. And I'm going to do everything in my power to be here for you every day, at least every other day, and to figure out this whole editing thing. But anyway, I want to keep it short today because I'm not feeling well, and I do have to get out there and work a few hours. But keep in mind the interaction with antibiotics. It's like some women get pregnant on antibiotics when they're on birth control. Antibiotics do not interact well with other drugs, but if it will set you into a withdrawal with the benzodiazepines or start triggering off symptoms, we need to know stuff like that. And we're not going to hear it. Now, the clinic knew I was doing a taper. That's why I wanted to have that second panel done. And they are the nicest. I mean, I use them as primary care. I probably shouldn't, but they're more effective and they're more knowledgeable and they're kinder and they listen more. And I know if she had that information, knowing I was on a benzo taper, she would have shared it with me. So that being said, it's something to keep in mind. I really did go from, mood and body wise kind of around a 7 or an 8 in terms of feeling, down to like 3 and like back in bed all weekend. So that, and just protecting yourself in terms of Klonopin most likely will not show up. This is Klonopin only. The other benzodiazepines, there's been no reports of them not showing up. So something weird's going on. The medical and science community are crickets on it. Your girl is all over it. Please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. And have a great day. Thanks, guys.